pieces of data that Rick gave us there was, 3.3 billion connected devices by next year, rising to 30 billion by 2020. And as the scope for cyber attack increases greater than exponentially, so too does the scope for more vendors coming into the market. We now have a position of something to the order of 1,500 vendors, which some would believe gives great opportunity for consolidation in the market. And one of the possible ways to achieve that consolidation is what IBM is currently delivering through their Watson platform. You heard a little bit about that from Martin. We're going to hear a lot more about it and a new approach to cognitive security, thanks to our next speaker, who's Chief Product Officer for IBM Security. Will you please welcome Denis Kennelly.
Good morning. So now the dress sense is going to go way up or way down, depending on which way you look at it, right? I bought this new jacket, right? And I'm going to have to match up to Rick and Martin here in terms of dress sense. But anyhow, so over the next few minutes here, I want to talk a little bit about IBM Security and to talk about, what we call a new approach on bringing cognitive to security. But like everything, I suppose we better start with a problem definition. And if I get to the right slide. And Martin, Rick talked about, the number of smart objects, etc. But if you go back to what Martin talked about, and if we talk about the data center, when life was nice and simple, we had a firewall, we had a WAF. Martin had his floppy disks, and he went around and he updated antivirus on the endpoint, and he controlled his fiefdom within that data center. And life was nice and simple. But then, we had the bright idea somewhere around the year 2000 that we said we would build websites, we'd get our businesses online. That was the first step. But then we said, we have this online portal with a presence, we want to transact business, right? And in that shift, right, so back from the data center, give or take, and when I talk about here smart objects, this is everything from a PC to a server, etc. And we generated about 100 exabytes of digital data. That was that amount of data. But then once we started to go online and actually do transactions, and if you look at Martin's slide set earlier, where he started to interact with banks, and he interacted with device vendors, things got a bit more complicated, and he got outside the four walls. And all of a sudden, there's a lot more objects or devices in play, and there's about a zettabyte of data in play. And that's roughly give or take where we are today, in the world of technology. And, from an attacker point of view, the attack surface is just expanding, right? So the amount of devices I can go after and the amount of data that I can get and, and use that data for other purposes. And then moving fast forward to what Rick is talking about, in terms of IoT and the number of devices, and as we move to 2020 and beyond, roughly, and I'll contradict a little bit of what Rick was saying, but we would claim about 50 billion objects that are out there and generating 40 zettabytes of data. And now you have really complicated ecosystems, business models, because it's no longer a case of the data center when you had a bunch of transactional processing, or in the digital enterprise where you had a set of players that the bank or the device vendor, where it was a well-defined set of players. Now you're getting into complex ecosystems like smart cars, smart devices, which are banks in themselves when you look at your mobile phone in terms of what it can do and how the disaggregation of a lot of these business processes are happening. So from an attacker point of view, this is just heaven, right, in terms of opportunity. So the point is the attack surface is expanding dramatically. So now let's put myself back in your shoes as a customer and what we as vendors will do to you to solve this problem. And this is how we will approach you. Here you go. There's about 1,500 of us that will all come at you and say, I have the answer. I have the silver bullet to solve your security problem. And in fact, the venture capitalists realize this as well and say there's good money to be made here by starting and investing companies to go after this problem. In fact, in 2016, about 280 companies were invested in by VCs to the tune of $3.5 billion. I have the nice job of, traveling the world and looking at some of these, because as good old IBM, we're seen as a potential buyer of these technology companies. And we've just come off the road from a show in Israel, Cybertech, which is a home of a lot of security innovation, and RSA, which was out in San Francisco about 2 weeks ago. And what you get there, I get your problem, because I walk into Cybertech and I see about 200 companies standing at a ped like this, each on their own ped with a laptop, and saying, it's like an Asian carpet sale. I have the answer for you, IBM, to solve that problem for your customer. And you look at this and you say, I get bamboozled, because how do you actually make sense of all this, and how do you actually solve the problem, given the problem that I just talked about? So it's a sea of vendors, and what is it? How do we change the game? And also, from a customer point of view, we have all these capabilities. We have all these, these different capabilities like privilege identity management, data monitoring, GDPR, malware, IoT, all collecting data, all presenting stuff, all in islands. And the other problem, of course, is you want to run your business. Security is a necessary evil to some extent, right? But you have a huge problem with skills, getting people that understand this and can be like the Martins that actually know what's going on the risks in the world, and be able to protect your environment. So skill shortage is a huge problem. It's predicted by 2020 about 1 million open positions in the security industry alone. So people that are knowledgeable of that, and you can really understand that in security, because we're all techies. We've come from a tech background. But to be really good at security, you got to understand networking, you got to understand databases, you got to understand servers, you got to understand the whole kit and caboodle. And it's actually a hard discipline to get into, and you need a lot of experience. So, how do we change the game? What do we do to actually look at this? So this is where our strategy within IBM, where we started to look at this and really look at this problem, and the sea of vendor problem, and this explosion of things and data, and actually start to look at this capability. And we sometimes use a healthcare analogy, and I'll use that metaphor back and forth here as I describe this, where we talk about an immune system approach. And the bubbles in the chart talk about the different capabilities and areas that we need to look at in terms of understanding security. You need to look at the endpoint. You need to look at the network. You need to look at your data. You need to look at where the users are, those insider threat users, and actually start to look at all those capabilities in an integrated fashion. And this is not all about all blue. This is actually working with our partners, including Trend Micro, and working together to actually deliver this capability. And think of it as an integrated set of capabilities. The other word we use is orchestrated. We actually acquired a technology about 2 years ago, well, a year and a half ago, called resilient systems, which is the ability to actually orchestrate remediation across these set of capabilities. Because when you actually start to look at security, it's not just about sitting here in Dublin or down in Cork or whatever, where you actually have to remediate a problem. Because when you get into complex ecosystems where you're working with third parties, where your data may be stored in a cloud provider that is not in Ireland or could be in Germany or whatever, and you actually start to think about the legal jurisdictions across those environments, the business processes and the flows and the set of things that you can do to remediate a problem is actually quite different. If you have a breach, as you know in GDPR world, the time you have to notify the regulator, and depending on the country, is going to be country specific. So it's not a simple case of, okay, let's, the data has gone, let's go, run it back up and, get it back online, and, it's tough and we'll take an outage. It's a lot more complicated than that, because you may have to notify a lot of authorities in different locations, and really understanding that and those capabilities is critical. And that's what we talk about. When I talk about an orchestrated set of capabilities, is understanding that, and that's one of the things behind this set of capabilities. So it's integrated and it's orchestrated. The third thing is the data, right? So back to my problem chart, the zettabytes of data. We have islands of data all over the place here. We know about users in directories. We know about databases in databases. We know about networks in networks. And of course, we have to start to somehow bring this together. That's what the SIM world does. That's what the security analytics platform at the center of this does. And that's what we're starting to do, is to bring that data together and bring visibility across these complex environments. Not alone within the data center, but also how you're adopting cloud services out in the cloud. And actually, we're working much more to make that as efficient as possible. It's not a case of let's copy all your data into an IBM system and IBM have all the data. It's actually also having federated approaches to get access to the data. Just think of it as getting access to the data. That's really what's important to us. So that immune system approach is kind of at the core of our strategy and of our platform and the set of decisions we make every day of the week. The other key attribute of this is that it has to be open. It's one thing to say, okay, that's IBM. It's an immune system, it's a nice ID, it's integrated and all that good stuff. But it also has to be open for everybody to play. And everybody can play. And as you can see on the chart that I've shown, we have something called an IBM App Exchange. And if you have internet access there, you can Google IBM App Exchange. You'll get to see over 100 vendors and applications that actually start to operate on top of this data that we've provided in the platform. And it's open to anybody to play. And it's also open to anybody to consume those applications into your environment. The only thing that we do is not like an app store model where we're not charging for the apps or anything like that, but we do test them to make sure that you're getting value in your environment. So it's an open application platform that actually you can interact with and get value from that data. Because remember back to those islands of data and bringing it together, at the end of the day, we want to deliver value. We want to deliver value to make sense of all that data. Which leads me to the next key point, which is bringing cognitive and Watson to security, which is an example of one of those applications, and it is available on that App Exchange right now. Before I get into the details of what it is and just talk a little bit about Watson and the kind of history of Watson. This was a platform that was built on IBM Research. Back in 2011, there's a game show in the US called Jeopardy, a general knowledge game show. There are Jeopardy masters, and it defeated the master in Jeopardy in 2011. Now, to do that, and remember, it's the computer against the human being. You can't just have a pure, pattern matching approach. You have to have a reasoning approach to be actually be able to do that. And because the questions are random, and nobody knows, how they're going to go, and there are bonus questions, etc. So that was the start of what was the Watson and cognitive journey. And the next big vertical it came into, and I think we all have family and loved ones that have been touched by cancer, unfortunately. And if you happen to, in India today, where there's a population of over 1 billion people, there's 1,000 oncologists. So if you're unfortunate enough in India to be struck down by cancer or have a cancer ailment, you have a big problem. The other thing about oncology and cancer is the amount of research that is happening. And I think, again, if anybody knows or had any loved ones that have been through treatment, year on year is changing, and the advances are just phenomenal. In fact, if you were to, as a human being, to read every piece of oncology research, you probably need, just to read it, not to understand it and to remember it, about 250 hours a week. There aren't that many hours in a week. So, how do you actually take all that knowledge that's being generated by fabulous researchers right around the globe and get it to places like India where there is a real need for something like this? And that's what we have done with Watson. We've taken all this, what we call unstructured data, because oncology research is going to be white papers. When you get into the field of oncology, not that I'm an expert, there's a set of vital signs, there's a terminology that is associated with cancer. And obviously the oncologists understand that, and Watson was trained in that starting in 2011. So about 2 years ago, we looked at this in the security space and said, man, if this thing can do this for cancer, which is a much more complicated space than security, then why can't we do this for security? And therein begun the journey of what it is is bringing Watson to security. And it just, a week ago today, we launched the first generally available solution on this platform. So let's talk about security and Watson and what it means. So if you're sitting as a security operator or a SOC operator inside a security operations center, and IBM runs these, SmartTech runs these, you run these, right? And we have, obviously with any consulting company, we have good understanding of the productivity, et cetera. Typically, when you're looking at an event or what we call an offense, the productivity rate is about 20 offenses per shift per key individual sitting there. So you can do the numbers, you take coffee breaks, et cetera, out of it. They have between 15 and 30 minutes when they see something happening in the environment to say, it's benign, I put it in the bin, or this is a big problem, or it's somewhere in between. So that's what we're dealing with. And the data they deal with is typically what's above the iceberg, which is above the surface. You get all this structured information, all this log information coming from all these systems that I talked about, all this network activity. We have a bunch of well-defined what we call threat feeds that tells you that this vulnerability is out there, this is the symptom of the vulnerability, and it's all very nice and structured. And you can write a computer program to do matching on that, and it's a fairly straightforward problem. That's what SIMs do. That's what the SIM world does. Now, that's about 20%, 10 to 20% of the knowledge, because if you're in Martin's shop and you're sitting there in the SOC and you get one of these things, that's the start of his journey. Now he has between 20 and 30 minutes to actually say, okay, I've seen this set of things happening, using a healthcare analogy, set of vital signs, blood pressure is up, temperature is slightly up on this set of endpoints. Now what do you do next? Get out your good friend Google and start looking at all these research papers. You're going to know, because these knowledgeable people, and they've learned this over time, they know where to hunt to actually say, well, I'm seeing this communication to this IP address, and I'm seeing this file on the endpoint. I know that there might be some article about that out there in some blog post somewhere, and you actually start to hunt and actually look to see, is there something going on there? That's what they are doing within that 15 to 30 minute window. And obviously if they get a hit there and they actually see something serious going on, they actually, depending on how they escalate it, et cetera. 80% of the knowledge is in that unstructured information. I mean, security is a game of wits. You have really sophisticated, really intelligent, really brilliant people, unfortunately, perpetrating the attacks. And on the other side, you have the same. And when you look at the Cloudflare example that Martin talked about, and the individual from Google, we all have these people employed, looking at each other's software to actually find these vulnerabilities. And when you have these people in your organization, they feel really proud that they actually find these vulnerabilities, which is a good thing, because it helps the common good. But there's an awful percentage of them where they just document them in blog posts and Twitter feeds, et cetera. And never, the vendors find out about it too late and in the day to put a remediation in place. Of course, the high-profile ones happen quickly, but there's an awful lot of stuff just sitting in here. And that's what the core of this is. On our average, there's about 200,000 events being handled every day in SOCs around the world. So there's 200,000 of these things happening today around the world. So just to kind of look a little bit more under the covers on what this Watson thing does, and how does it do all this stuff that I'm on about. So every five minutes, we basically update what we call the structured data. All these, virus total, all these feeds. We have a bunch of paid threat feeds in there. But every hour we have identified, and this was the critical piece of work that was done around Watson, to find where all this unstructured data is. And there's about 1 million documents in there that we literally crawl every hour for updates. And we are after keywords and changes within those documents and something that's going on about Shamoon or whatever malware thing is hot out there, where it's happening, et cetera, and feeding that into a corpus of data. And then every week, we go and say, all right, let's open the search up to everything we ever found, because even though we have 1 million documents we've identified, there could be a new there could be 1,000,001 document That's really important this week that we need to go look at. So also look at that. And bringing all that information together into what, in Watson terms, calls as a corpus. And think of it as a graph of nodes and edges, which we have put together that you can query, and it sits out in the cloud, and actually sits there in the cloud that you can query. So how we tie it together is you have an instance of our software curator sitting in your site. You have a user interface that sees one of these events firing, and you say, and there's a button literally there, go ask Watson. What does Watson think in terms of this event? Is this benign? Is this a false positive? Or is this something bigger than I understand it to be? And remember, you've got to do this in 15, 20 minutes. So, give you some customer case studies. And I'm going to talk about a customer that presented this. So we've just released this thing about a week ago. We've had 40 customers in beta. And I'll talk about a local customer in a minute. But I'm going to talk about a US customer just to start with. Because like me, I'm lazy. I steal slides everywhere. And I stole their slides from RSA, who did a presentation in RSA on this. The company is Scana Energy. They're an energy provider based in South Carolina. 160-year-old, long-term company, right? A bunch of subsidiaries, complex company, doing a utility company, and lots of various businesses going on here. So, they have multiple deployments of Curator depending on their business. And, you look at this and say, this is a big company, this is not me. They have shifts of analysts, right? They have kind of experienced people working the normal hours, and then, they have shifts of level 1, level 2, level 3 operators. And that could be, any of you there. I mean, you could have this outsourced, you could have somebody else running this, and they have different backgrounds. But you can think of the level 1 guys are the junior people, and then obviously as it escalates up, you move the thing up through the chain. And of course, there's a motivation to prevent these attacks when you look at the fines that they are, the compliance fines that they are subject to here. So here's an example, and this is, I was going to try and do a demo of this, but anyhow, I said I'd better not wing it with a demo, and I'll try and show you in slides. So here is an example, and on the left is an actual screenshot of Watson. So there was a malware download. This is a real live example that happened in the environment. The malware was blocked. So their firewall or whatever IPS or whatever actually detected it. So it's a good thing, right? So remember your 15 to 20 minute window. How much time do I need to worry about this? Do I just move on? It was blocked, no big deal. Everything is working, right? And the tree there shows the number, each node in that tree is the number, each of the different endpoints or IP addresses that it touched, right? But everything was remediated, and actually they had all the protections in place. The question is, though, right, when Watson looked at this, it started to realize that this was part of a much bigger campaign. And you see, when you're sitting there in the SOC and you say, well, it's blocked and everything, I got to move on. I have 19 more of these things to look at, right? You actually say, okay, I've got the answer, move on. But then, when you realize this is actually what was going on in the environment. Now, you can't read that, nor can I up here, but just think about this. Each node there was impacted by this malware campaign. So how, in heaven's name, would any operator be able to find that mess even in 20 minutes or 20 hours or 20 days to actually really get to the bottom of the level of infiltration that was going on? And that is what the machine learning and cognitive is able to do within minutes. And that's why we are so excited about this, as saying this is something that really can change the industry. Something that has, where we have worked with many customers, and this company here stood up at RSA after 30 days of using this and produced something like this. For somebody like me who's been at this for about 30 years, I've never seen anything like this. So, we feel we're onto something pretty amazing here. And, these are some of the actual findings in terms of how they can respond to what's going on here. Without Watson, in the case of Scana, 50 minutes, okay? So I said, 15 to 30 minutes. And they go through all those structured information with Watson, about 10 minutes. 5 minutes to find the answer, and 5 minutes to check the homework that they were correct. And actually, you can see that's going on. And of course, we would expect as people build confidence over time, that people will accept the answer. But we're not there right now. There's a consistency, right? So, and of course, this is all about the data. That's why we want to get that immune system, a platform to actually get all the data. Because at the end of the day, the other thing we're finding, I tell a story here, right? But what we're also finding, what's really important is, as the beeps go, is that you actually have to get the vital signs from the environment. Back to the healthcare analogy, you miss one key vital sign. You miss one key swab or whatever in that oncology search, right? And you could be missing a key piece. So getting the vital signs is important. And at the same time, making sure we have all the research coming at the problem as fast as possible. That's what we're trying to solve in terms of bringing this together. Sorry, how can I go back? Here we go. So in summary, in terms of some of the metrics that we're seeing right now, investigation about 60 times faster to actually investigate these problems. For me, one of the critical ones, though, is the accuracy. 10 times more accurate. We can always throw, these technology solutions all sound great, but I could throw some more people at it. But accuracy more people doesn't help you with accuracy, right? Because, we're all time-driven people with pressures, etc. You want to make sure you have the most complete answer. And when we get under pressure, we all take shortcuts. So accuracy is really important to us. And then, of course, you have consistent intelligence where you have those million documents that are feeding this thing every hour, every day, every week. Just to finish, and I'll tell a story, and hopefully I won't get myself in trouble with any of the companies I'm going to mention, but one of them is Martin's company, and the other one is Ronan's company. And about 2 months ago or 3 months ago, Ronan called me up one day, and he said, hey, Denis, and you know the way Ronan goes, hey, Denis, I see you have this Watson thing. And I said, yeah, Ronan, we have, and it's in beta. How can I get access to that? So I connected Ronan up, and I said, okay, I don't expect to see anything from this, right? Because we're working with about 40 customers, and I feel, you really need to have a well-tuned system, and you have to have a lot of things working well for you. So, but I said, Ronan, I know Ronan, I wouldn't say no to him in a month of Sundays, and have at it. I didn't hear from Ronan for about another 6 weeks. And I didn't hear from Ronan directly, and he doesn't know this story. But I was also then chasing one of our product managers and said, guys, what's going on out there with the betas? Has any use cases, is there anything going on? And next thing, I get this email back with a use case from SmartTech and Nabtran, and how this thing detected a malware campaign a couple of miles down the road from me, a ransomware campaign, and I won't get into the details, where the source of it, et cetera, came from. And they actually pulled this off within, 4 to 5 weeks of getting this going. Which to me is, a testament, first of all, to SmartTech. It gives me great confidence, obviously, in the technology, that we can quickly get it deployed and installed, and hopefully help companies like Aptran. You see other companies and other quotes up there, and this is something that we are very excited about. But just to finish, in terms of IBM Security, it's about the platform, it's about being open, and it's about being cognitive. Thank you.